morning. Good morning. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. I'm Reverend Bonnie Rose, and it's great to see you here this morning. And so we move into that knowing that there truly is only one life, and that life is God's life. That life is a life of love, and that life is our life right now. We open our hearts to be present to that life of spirit in this sacred moment and in all moments. And in this moment, we open our ears and listen to the words of our sacred reading.
Mastering Relationships from Whatever Arises, Love That by Matt Kahn. As you are willing to give more love, not less, even in the presence of behavior that you might think does not necessarily deserve such a gift, you can choose to engage in the most spiritually relevant and noble way. When someone says words that may not feel good in your body, seem sarcastic in tone, and are meant to judge versus uplift you, this only offers you greater opportunities to raise the vibration of your response. No matter how hurt or disappointed you are in the behavior of others, it is your willingness to turn anything that someone gives you into a gift that liberates you from the despair of human suffering. At this very moment, there are endless gifts residing in your heart. You are here, exploring an evolving world that is ready to receive the miracle of your immaculate grace. How you decide to deliver each healing gift is entirely up to you.
And so we breathe into the awareness of that immaculate grace that is the stuff of our existence. It is the fabric of who we are. And we trust it, and we know it. We allow it to fill our consciousness, to fill our hearts, our bodies, our minds. And in the space of awareness of grace, we bless ourselves as we sing our next chant, but we also bless the others sitting in this sanctuary. And our blessing becomes so full that it overflows and spills out to embrace the entire universe, all beings everywhere. And here we go. I am the name of the indwelling of the Spirit of God that lives and moves and has its being within us. I am peace. I am joy. I am love. In the consciousness of this awareness, let us breathe in deeply and then exhale, opening our eyes in love with what is, as it is. And so it is.
Would I be standing here after all these years, among the stars above? Maybe not, if it wasn't for your love. Smiling faces all around, like when the king has just been crowned. A battle has been won that I'd have lost if it wasn't for your love. A fairy tale unfolds of truth and stories have been told. See how it feels to live a dream could I have touched the sky, ever flown so high, if it wasn't for your love? Thank you.
I'll tell you a story about that I heard on a video, some type of lecture about awakening and compassion and all of this stuff that we teach here. And the story was about a nurse whose name was Lucy. And Lucy was a very experienced nurse. She was working in a cancer hospital, and she came to work one day and she was told that she needed to train a new nurse, and this new nurse name was Mary. So Lucy met Mary and started engaging her and training her in all of the rigors of the job. And Lucy just didn't really like working with Mary. She felt like Mary was kind of needy and a little, she smiled a little bit too much, and she felt like she might be kind of a weak person. And she didn't really say any of this out loud, but there was probably a lot of eye rolling and a little bit of scowling. They finished their shift, and Mary went to pack up her things, and she encountered another nurse named Joanne. Mary and Joanne struck up a conversation, and Lucy was getting her things, and she overheard this conversation. Joanne asked Mary how her first day went, and Mary said, "Oh, I learned a whole lot. It was really wonderful." And they started talking more about what brought Mary to the hospital and what her life was like outside of the hospital. And Mary said, "Well, I'm here because I changed my whole life because I had a child, and my child passed away. And I had to reach deep into myself and find the courage to start over after that. And I'm here because of that." And Joanne asked Mary to show a picture, and Mary showed a picture of her child who had passed away, and said that she lit up like a sunrise when she showed this picture. And Joanne, who had just spent the last 8 hours judging her, felt like crap. This is not a story about how we shouldn't judge others, because I know that we all know that, and we've all probably mastered that by now, haven't we? Unless you do what my friend John calls prayerfully judging others. This is more a story about Mary. How did she withstand 8 hours of eye-rolling and scorn, and still have the courage to say it was a good day, and not have that behavior from a person who was judging her? How did that not diminish her? Because she was so much more than Lucy's opinion of her. She was this full being who might have been needy and insecure and lacked courage, but at the same time, she was this being who had withstood the loss of a child and had picked her life up and had the courage to start over. I think we're all everything all the time. And this talk is about realizing that. Realizing that particularly in the face of somebody else's criticism of us. Has anyone here ever been criticized? Has anyone here never been criticized? Let me put it that way. If so, please stand up so we can take you down a peg. How's that? Right. No. In this book, our featured book, which is Whatever Arises, Love That, Matt Kahn talks about how love is not defensive. When we're criticized, the first thing we want to do is defend ourselves, right? Whether it's right with the other person or in our heads about the other person. He says that love is not defensive. Love is offensive. Love is offensive? Well, it's offensive in terms of like football, where it has a goal and it seeks assertively to meet that goal by assertively, with loving kindness, meeting any of the jabs that are thrown our way. One of the main things that he says in this book throughout it is that when we're in a situation where our energy is being sucked down into a spiral by somebody's negativity, even if it's negativity about us, it is our responsibility to raise our vibration rather than allowing ourselves to be sucked down into somebody else's negative agenda. How about that? he gives an example in the book. He talks about how, I don't know why I'm picking this example, but he talks about how he was in a shopping mall one day, and an old friend that he hadn't seen for 5 years encountered him in this shopping mall. And the friend walked up to him and he said, "Oh my God, Matt, I haven't seen you for like 5 years. You have gained some weight, dude." You know, what would your first reaction be? Like, what? What's wrong with, did I really? He said that his response was to bring this gentleman's vibration to an upper, or to bring his own vibration in response to this criticism, to bring it up. It wasn't about telling this guy he was wrong. It wasn't even about telling this guy he was right. What he said to him in response was, "You know what? I really have. I've gained about 10 pounds. So I'm going to make a commitment to you that I am going to start taking better care of my health and my exercise and my eating habits because I can see that you really, truly care about me." Oh my God. I read that and I'm like, I am so not saying that to anybody. So not ever saying that to anybody. I think the point is not about being insincere or trying to spiritualize everything, trying to do spiritual bypass about the way that you're really feeling. I think the point is something else, and I'll illustrate that with this next story. Some of you may know that anybody who writes or speaks or breathes or works as a teacher or as a parent is sometimes open to a certain amount of criticism, and I'm no exception to that. And a couple of weeks ago, I wrote a blog that was a nonpartisan look at the election, and it was very simple, very straightforward, very truthful. My bias only shows a teeny bit, and somebody responded to it in a way that felt critical at first. And I felt immediately, the reason I know it felt critical was because I felt the immediate need to defend myself and tell this person that he was wrong for criticizing me. And this is someone that I know well. When I was able to step back and breathe and look at his email to me a little bit differently, I recognized something else. And I recognized that he was not being critical, he was just expressing his point of view, and he was doing it in a very kind and loving way. In fact, he was being more of a coach than a critic, and he was saying, "This one line here that I object to, one line in the whole thing, this one line that I object to, have you thought of saying it this way?" Now, if I had been Matt Kahn in this book, I would have said, "I appreciate what you did, and I am going to change this line because you want me to do it." But I didn't do that. I did something just as good. I said to him, "You know, I get so clearly this wonderful email that you sent me is your desire to protect me," because he didn't want me to get a lot of flack for what I had written. "I get that it's your desire to protect me, and that is so sweet and so endearing. But you know, I meditated on that line for a long time, and I think I'm going to need to keep it the way it is." Right? So it's not about caving into somebody else's wishes. It's not about doing what other people need you to do so they can be happy. It's not about any of that. I think it's about seeing the innocence in the other person, as well hidden as it may be, and then responding truthfully. But not only responding to the truth or untruth of their criticism, responding to the truth of their whole being, the whole being that is all of us, the truth of who all of us are, responding truthfully. There was a beautiful example of this that I saw live on stage from another speaker, another teacher, not Matt Kahn, that's who this is, Kyle Cease. Kyle Cease he's hard to describe, but he's a non-dual mystic teacher that was a stand-up comedian for 25 years. So there's a lot of rowdy comedy in his delivery. Does that sound familiar to anybody who attends here? Okay. So, you know, there's a resonance there. There's a resonance going on. And I went to a lecture of his, a 2-day program, actually, that was many hours in this theater in Glendale. Sorry, I'm stuttering a little bit. I took an antihistamine before church today, so I'm a little... Anyway, it can only help. So I went to this lecture, and I was there with some people from the church, and I was sitting with one of our practitioners, Peter, and when the first day was over, we left, and we were walking down the street to go back to the hotel where we all were staying, and there was a man there, and I'm going to tell you what he looked like, because that matters later on. He was tall, about 6 feet or so. He was heavy-set. He was wearing black leather pants and a black leather vest, and he had a red shirt on, and he had long hair that he had put into a greasy ponytail at the back of his neck. And this man was complaining at the top of his voice. He was telling anybody who would listen what was wrong with the seminar and how it had been a horrible experience for him. Peter and I had a Jinx, you owe me a Coke moment where we looked at each other and we're like, we need to cross the street. And we did. We had to cross the street to get away from him because I think both of us felt that our energy was getting sucked into this vortex of this guy's energy. And we wanted to enjoy the seminar that we were attending. We didn't want to be sucked into seeking for things that were wrong with it, right? So we crossed the street, went our separate ways, and the next day, Kyle walks out, the facilitator, Kyle, the teacher, walks out onto the stage. He gets a huge round of applause. People leap to their feet. And he says, you don't know how good that made me feel that you did that. Because I have to tell you, last night, it wasn't an email. Somebody made a video, a movie, about how bad the first day was for them. And they said that they hadn't gotten anything out of it, and they accused me of being a fake because all the people that came up on stage and talked about the transformation, this guy said he worked in reality television and he knew a fake when he saw it. That the people in the audience that came up onto the stage and said that their lives have been transformed through this work were faking it. So Kyle, in his wisdom, because the guy had actually acknowledged who he was and gave him a return address, he emailed this guy back and he said, would you be willing to come up on stage and work with me? And so Kyle called the gentleman up on stage, and do you have any doubt who it was? It was Peter Frank. No, I'm kidding. No, it was Rick Southam. No, no, it was the guy with the leather pants and the leather vest that was talking at the top of his voice and felt that was not enough, and he needed to tell Kyle how badly he felt about this experience that he had. So the guy came up on stage, and there were a lot of people there that really liked Kyle Cease, and you could feel it was kind of like, you ever seen a gladiator movie? That's a line from Airport, isn't it? The gladiator movies where there's like this angry crowd in the Coliseum, and somebody comes into the ring to be destroyed, and the crowd was all like, you hurt my friend. The reason I'm bringing up this story, though, is to tell you what worked about it. What worked, why this guy could come up on the stage, and it turned out well, and I'll tell you the ending shortly, but I want to talk about why it worked first. First of all, Kyle, in the face of criticism that was really, really very harsh, acknowledged how he was feeling. He was truthful about how he was feeling. He said that one of the worst things that you could call him was a hypocrite. And I know that well because that's a really difficult thing for a spiritual teacher to be called. The truth is that everybody is a hypocrite, so we're no exception. I've said to you many times before, sometimes I'm doing the opposite of what I've talked about on the stage by the time I get to the back of the church. We're all just holding up a high standard, but he did not like being called a hypocrite. He did not like hearing that he had planted people in the audience to talk about fake transformations. So he said that really hurt his feelings, and that made him feel really bad. And those of us who are in metaphysical teachers were like, well, nobody can make you feel anything. You're responsible for your feelings, Kyle. But no, it was beautiful. He did not use that Band-Aid to put on top of that and just said, I feel really, really badly about this. But in the midst of feeling badly, he knew that the badness was there for the unfoldment of greater goodness, that there was something good to be had in this experience, that there was a possibility that he would not be able to reap unless he was able to first acknowledge that he felt badly and be truthful about it, and then second, take some type of spiritual action, whether in consciousness or in deed, to realize this greater possibility. And the action that he took was to call this gentleman up onto the stage and talk with him until he could see his innocence, and the gentleman on stage could see Kyle's innocence. They found each other's innocence. And it took a long time. It took a really long time. But at the end of it, they had found each other's innocence. The turning point for me, I think, was when Kyle was talking to this man, the leather pants man, And he said to him something like, well, you work in reality TV, don't you? And the guy was like, oh, yeah, I do. And, this was just like reality TV. They manipulate everything. People think that stuff is real, but we're really manipulating everything behind the scenes. And Kyle was like, okay, so this is your job, and you spend how many hours a week doing this? 50 or so. So are you seeing everybody through the lens of manipulation then? And the guy paused and breathed. And Kyle said to him, when are you going to stop doing that? Is there something else that you'd rather do? And then, oh my gosh, you were there. It was so beautiful. The guy turned into like a 5-year-old, and all of a sudden he became shy and humble. And he said, there is something I'd like to do. Kyle said, would you be willing to share it? And the guy said, yes. I am the premier meatloaf impersonator of Southern California. For those of you, I had to look up Meatloaf. I don't know much about popular music, but Meatloaf is this big, tall guy with long, stringy hair. But the change in him when he talked about what he really wanted to be when he grew up was amazing. This innocence just rained down upon him and poured out from his heart. And then Kyle took it one step further because he's a pianist. He sat at the piano and he said, sing something by Meatloaf. And the guy, oh, this is beautiful. The guy, he had his hair in a greasy ponytail and he whipped off his headband and let his ponytail fly. And he sang some Meatloaf song that I don't remember, but it was amazing. Everybody was on his side by the time he sat down. And that's what I hold for all of us in our conflicts. The willingness to be truthful about how we feel, but also the willingness to recognize that there is a greater possibility. That there is a greater possibility, even when we're feeling our worst, even when someone has been totally mean and inappropriate to us, there is a greater possibility to be had. And perhaps that possibility, there may be many ways of doing this, but one way to giving birth to this possibility is through sitting with the person and talking and being truthful and recognizing their innocence, allowing their innocence to emerge so that they can see your innocence and you can see theirs. People will see your innocence when you see theirs. Well, it's easier said than done. Let me see if there's anything I left out here. Okay. So in case anybody is wondering, struggling about how to really implement this, because we probably all have somebody in our lives, right? Somebody where it's really, really difficult to see their innocence, somebody who's very critical. Again, as I always say, don't start with Hitler. That means don't start with the worst person in your life, the most difficult person in your life. Start with somebody that there's some hope of reconciliation and innocence restored so that you can move on. But also try it with the really difficult people too. And one way that has helped me with this is sort of whimsical, but I guess you all are used to that now, right? And kind of have whimsical ideas. Has to do with receiving gifts of criticism from the congregation, but also other types of gifts that I receive from the congregation. Today as I walked in, Reverend Judy Pando said she had a gift, and Rita gave me a dish towel. And was that you? Yeah, it was, okay. Sorry, it's the antihistamine speaking, I'm sorry. Yeah, a dish towel, and Barb gave me this top. But a phenomenon that's been happening lately is that, okay, we have a yard sale almost every year, and for the last 2 or 3 yard sales, I have cleaned out my closet and put my clothes in the yard sale, the things I don't want anymore. And then somebody from the congregation will come and spend their hard-earned money to buy back my clothes and give them to me. The point is that there are sometimes gifts that you don't really want, right? But I can see the innocence of that when it has to do with clothing. I can see the innocence of somebody saying, it's so sweet, it's somebody saying, wow, that would look really good on Bonnie. It's like they know what I like, they know my size, but they don't know the whole story that I've worn it for a while and I've decided to let it go. But there is such innocence and such kindness and such sweetness in that. Maybe many layers behind some of the criticism that we receive, there is that same innocence and same sweetness. There is some longing that they have. And it may look like a longing for you to be different, but it's really a longing for them to be different. What I found really helpful is to think of criticism as clothing. It's an item of clothing. I can look at it, I can put on this mantle that somebody is assigning to me and say, yes, I want to wear this. Or I can say, this really doesn't fit anymore. I'm going to pass it on. I'm going to give it to somebody else who really could use it or could really need it. Are you willing to think of criticism as clothing? It's super helpful. It really is. It's really, really helpful. So in all of this talk about innocence and peace and bringing more love to the world and raising our vibrations to a higher level, this is an interesting week coming up, isn't it? I want to just relate it so that we can all kind of be in a place where we are open to greater possibilities. It has been a week or an election period that has been challenging for many people. And I'll say this again, I say this every time I bring up the election. I am deliberately nonpartisan in this church because I know that we have both conservatives and liberals. We have people on the right and the left and everything in between. And I want everyone to feel welcome here. But one thing that we can all do is to find our own innocence and deal with our reactivity around what's happening and pray and meditate and really get back to that place where we are recognizing our attachment to this being the worst election ever. You've heard that this is the worst election ever, and we can't say that because we weren't at all the other elections, right? What if this is the best election ever? Remember I said that love is offensive? That may be offensive to our egos. It may be offensive to the part of us that is afraid. But what if we could just crack open that tiny possibility that this is the best election ever because things are getting stirred up, things that need to get healed, places where we need to see each other's innocence, places where we need to hold and support a greater truth that is seeking to emerge through all of us, individually and collective. What if this is the best election ever? And we are the ones, through our honesty, through our independent thinking, through our joy, and through our willingness to reveal innocence. What if we are the ones to give birth to it in a new age? I believe this to be so. Let us do that now, and let us pray. And so I go into that place of knowing, that place of wholeness, that place of goodness, that place of trust, that place of knowing that God is in everything, and that there is a power and a force that is greater than my small self that is orchestrating all events, whether personal or nationwide or global. There is a power and a presence that is getting it done in its own unique and wonderful way. And while the small self may be ignorant as to the bigger picture, the larger self holds the vision of a world that works for everyone. A world where there is grace. A world where there is kindness. A world where wholeness and forgiveness is the norm. A world where we are good to one another. A world where we see the truth about people. Even people who are suffering, even people who are criticizing, even people who are difficult, we see the truth of their innocence and we allow space through our own working on our own vibrational energy to allow that innocence to emerge. Together we hold our beautiful country in the spaciousness of this grace, in the trust of knowing that God is in this election, in the trust of knowing that God is fully invested in our country and in our good. And we allow what is to be. We do our part while we allow what is to be. And we move to a place of great and deep understanding, a place of knowing, and a place of trust, and a place of love where we simply release and let go and let God. In so doing, we be the candidate. We are the candidate that we wish to see. And so I am grateful, so grateful for this opportunity, grateful for this opportunity to grow together as a congregation in richness and in wisdom, to grow together as a country in evolving the greater good for all beings, to grow together in many, many ways, in ways that are beyond even what I can speak about or know, beyond what any of us know. I am so grateful to grow in trust and forgiveness and peace and understanding. and with a heart that is filled with hope, a heart that is filled with gratitude, a heart that is filled with love, I say, thank you, Spirit, thank you, God. And I release these words into the mystery. And together we say, and so it is. I am so...
I was walking along, minding my business, when out of that orange-colored sky, flash, bam, a halakazam, a wonderful you came by. I was walking along, drinking in sunshine, when love came and hit me in the eye. Flash, a bam, a halakazam, out of that orange-colored sky. One look and I yelled timber, watch out for flying glass. 'Cause the ceiling fell in and the bottom fell out. I went into a spin and I started to shout, this is it, this is it, this is it, I've been hit. I was walking along, minding my business, when love came and hit me in the eye. Flash, bam, a halakazam, out of that orange-colored sky.